Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Matthew, who is also known as Almost a Doctor on Twitter, which I have links below, and you also can find his YouTube channel there. He does all sorts of science-based YouTube videos, so we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of this, of course. Unfortunately, Mikey's not with us today. His show ran a little long, so he's taking a bit of a breather, and then he's going to join us for the after party, so... there is a link to below if you want to check out the after party after the interview, and we'll be having a lot of fun in that, as you guys know by now. Anyways, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to this for a little while. We had to delay the last one because so hopefully this one can make up for it, and we can get through a lot today.
Yeah, I obviously, with my mom being sick and stuff like that, that was part of the reason, right? But she's much, much better now, and she's actually on solid foods again. So they've taken her off the feeding tube. So it's a good thing. I'll probably end up going to see her tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, especially for her, because she was just going nuts there. So, but I was keeping her in good spirits. Anyways, what I do here is I talk to people about how they found their way out of whatever belief systems they were once a part of. I generally ask them to kind of take us as back as far as you can remember, anyways, and how you noticed those dominoes falling and how you ended up finding your way out.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Well, I might then start with what I used to believe in and where I came from. So I'll keep my family out of this as much as I can, just because
Sure.
I can't read their minds and I don't know exactly what they'll feel. But I was raised religious. I started off primary school. I was at a Catholic school, and then high school though I was at a Uniting Church school. So I got a bit of a kind of an overview of different areas of Christianity that way. But growing up here in Australia, we don't tend to have quite as serious adherence to religion as you'll find in, say, the United States, but there is still a majority of people. In fact, the percentage of people here that would identify as not religious is about the same as America. We just have a lot less people going to church and things, but that wasn't really us. So as I said, I grew up at a Catholic school, and as far as I can remember, we went to church. So we would go every Sunday. It was the traditional Catholic kind of ceremony, and I was quite into it. I found most of the services, like any child, boring, but as I got older, I became an altar server, which I was one of the longest running altar servers. So for anyone who's not familiar, I would help the priest out with the session. So that would be holding candles, holding the books, finding readings, helping just move things around. And they wanted me to even become, a few points I got asked to, if I wanted to, even though it would make me the youngest one there, a Eucharist minister, which was essentially the main helper for the priest during the session. So I was quite into it. I went to some of the youth group sessions, and I was the sort of person who did also read like the children's Bibles. I haven't fully read the Bible, but I'd read all the nice passages, I guess we can put it, to keep it simple. So I was coming from that kind of background, but I've always loved kind of science, engineering, how things work. So at no point did I ever think that God would violate the laws of physics, or did I ever think anything that was be generally considered pseudoscience. I did love my like as a kid, I loved dinosaurs. I love them more now. Yes,
I have a question. You say that you didn't think God could break the laws of physics and whatnot. Wouldn't that be the entire beginning of the Genesis story?
So I was going to get to that, but because it's kind of a bit of a spoiler, but where I got to towards the end of my time as being religious was almost like deist Christianity, and it was quite a unique view,
like the Spinoza one or whatever, right?
Maybe we'll go through it and see how closely it lines up. But it was an interesting one, because I got to the point where it's like, but if he made the universe, then he made the laws of physics the way he wanted. Why would he mess with them? Couldn't he use it all? But so when I was young, I was really into it, and I didn't necessarily believe that, say, like atheists or anyone would go to hell. that was not something that was put on me. It was kind of like hell is only if you're really, really bad, for people like Hitler or for Stalin or like mass murderers. That was kind of so I had a very, very kind of nice view of it, which really did help later when I wasn't religious. I never had so fortunate in that from listening to other people. I was never had that kind of, oh, you're going to burn if you don't believe this. It was, as long as you're a nice person, then you shouldn't burn. And I look at that back at that now, going, I was lucky, but there's no evidence to suggest anyone is going to burn after this life. So I'm quite grateful for that, because yes, it never quite occurred to me the infinite punishment for a finite crime, or that these people might have been the way that God wanted them to. But that was not the way I thought. I had a view of Christianity where you'd see the world through my own perspective, and I just felt that there was a God. So the Romans 1:20 passage was brought to me in high school, and I was like, yeah, I like that one. Kind of a bit of look at the trees, but I didn't quite think of it like that at the time, if that makes sense. I was very kind of relaxed in it. I didn't have too much of a problem with, because I was at school, there were quite a few atheists in my year group and around. So it wasn't as though it was like I was unfamiliar with people that didn't believe, but I kind of viewed them as, no, they just don't understand. They just, there was something that they were not understanding about. They were missing something. And I thought of it as like, you don't necessarily need to be Christian, or my version of Christian, to be a good person, but it makes you more wholesome, if that makes sense. I think that's, the more I've thought about it, that's probably the best I can come up with in terms of how I viewed it. Like it gave you something extra. And the more I look back at it, it was this idea that I kind of thought that Christianity was better, and Christians were sort of better people in some way, without saying that it was like, oh, I'm better than you, but it was like, yeah, maybe more wholesome. I'll stick with that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was important for when I started to lose my faith. So I was quite religious, as I've mentioned, even if I had slightly different views to what most people do. And that happened all through school. I was religious all the way through, even though I was still Catholic, even though I went to a Protestant high school. That didn't affect that. I thought there was just different versions of the same God. I was the sort of person that wouldn't even let my Bible lie down in like Christian studies lectures. I would sit it up because it was like a special book sort of thing, even though I was aware of some of the passages in the Old Testament that were about slaughtering everyone, but it was kind of like, oh no, that's Old Testament. However, then
I've heard that excuse brought up before. Oh, that's the old covenant. Oh, really? So God does change then, because they say he's unchanging, but I don't know.
Yep. Sorry, someone's just turning the air conditioner on in this, or the heater on in this office, because it used to be a lab, so it controls 3. So if you hear the door in the background, that's probably what it is.
Sure.
So then I got to university, and so I finished school. I did well enough that I could do pretty much what I wanted in terms of the area I was interested in, and that was kind of science. So I did a double degree. Started a double degree in science and commerce. So I was doing a bunch of different majors. I knew I wanted to do chemistry. And business, I just kind of went with finance because it was all more mathsy, more numbers one, and I'd done a fair bit of maths at school, and then kept going uni because now I'm doing physics. I need maths, whether I wouldn't say I was brilliant at it, but I was capable of doing the higher level maths. So it's like, why not? I need it.
Sure.
And so for first year uni, not much happened, and then there was things started to fall. The first domino started to fall very, very slowly. And I'm not actually sure the exact moment, but I remember thinking that it was like, I could feel like doubts in my head. It's like, no, I just haven't been to church for a while. I just need to go back. I need to pray. I need to have kind of that experience where, because I would never generally ask for things in prayer. I'd just thank God for the things we had, and then say, our Father. And I would always try and stay on my knees longer than most people. Essentially, if I was an altar server, I had to, because I was up the front, had to show the example. And you'd get praise for those sorts of things. So it was always this nice community there. But I started like thinking, oh no, doubts. I didn't want to have them. I was like, no, because it'll make me in hindsight, it'll make me a worse person. This is the truth. I've got to believe it, and I'll be nicer when I understand that there is a God, when there is more to life than just me. I didn't really understand what a lot of the secular humanist or the
Mhm.
most of the more thought out positions on atheism, whether that's weak or strong. I was not aware of any of that at this time.
Okay.
But what was happening in science was I was slowly learning, and it was slowly being drilled into me, that you cannot make a statement without evidence.
Yeah.
And on top of doing regular classes, I was doing a lot of research projects on top of what I needed to do, whether those were volunteer, whether those were just for a bit extra credit. I did summer projects, things like that. So I was getting a lot of experience doing research, and I was constantly being told, if you are not, no, you cannot say that. You need better reasons for that. And so I was slowly in my mind changing the way I thought. It wasn't, as I said, that I ever denied science. It was I was slowly getting my mind into, I guess, a better critical thinking position. And
Sure.
it wasn't a fast process. From memory, it was like over probably a year and a half at least. But the other thing that happened simultaneously, and I haven't heard this in pretty much anyone else's deconversion stories, is I love history. I love learning more and more about history. And pretty much if it happened before 1946, I'll be interested.
Right.
Maybe some exceptions around the medieval period, but but even then I'll still probably listen. So, and that includes prehistory, but it also includes the history of Europe and the history of the church. And so I kind of also had the view that because you were a bit more wholesome you'd be like sort of a nicer person, or religion made you a nicer person. I thought that, that would kind of go for the church, even if it didn't represent individuals in that church, which was kind of how I excused some of the more heinous acts of it. But overall, it'd be good. But as I started learning more and more about history, the more I started to realize these guys have been taking advantage of people for potentially a couple of thousand years. And so that was also going on. And then as I started to, and so slowly over the course of about a year and a half, without listening to any atheist sources, still occasionally going to church, I just started to put everything together. It was like, they don't have any evidence. There's no reason to believe that what they're saying is true, as much as what I previously thought. And then I started, at uni, I was meeting more and more people who weren't religious. And unlike, the pretentious high school kids that I always thought, oh, no, they're not religious, but look how pretentious they are, look how arrogant they are. Now I was meeting more and more people who were just super, super nice, who didn't believe. A lot of my close friends, as it turns out, weren't believers. They were similar to me. They just never thought there was much reason. And so the day,
what kind of goes through your head when you meet people like that? Like when you meet people that aren't religious, and you may have thought that they might have been, like, what kind of things go through your head when you meet these kind of people?
I was always the sort of person who didn't generally bring it up. So I was kind of like, you do you, but don't like, because the sorts of examples I had from high school were people,
Joseph, he's been a guest on the show as well.
Yeah, I was just saw that that's a lot more than I was doing. But the church I was intended to take people when they were younger for that. Whereas I've done it a few times, even as an atheist, at a Maronite Catholic church, which I'm happy to get to later, which was very interesting. One little story that I find quite amusing, but come back to this. And so most of the time is that, a lot of the ones when I was younger, I just thought, they're a bit, it was kind of almost an arrogance to it to say, there's no God, we don't need the Bible. I'm like, no, you can't say that. It's such a wonderful book, because that's what I'd been told. It's got all these wonderful stories, even though it just hadn't clicked at that point in my brain that some of these stories were not that nice. I didn't yet know about, like, say, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I didn't know that they had older versions. I knew it wasn't. I said I was still fairly big on science and history, so I knew it wasn't the oldest religion.
I think there's 4 different global flood type stories
from that region, at least. And I was always so I fairly well understood parts of some of the other big religions, because the school would teach religious studies in Christian studies, if that makes sense. But we wouldn't spend a lot of time. It was just, this is what they believe, and then we'd kind of move on. So it wasn't as though I wasn't aware of it. And so I'd meet people of different ones, and I kind of looked at it as though if you're religious but you're not my religious, you'll still probably have that extra thing, that extra wholesomeness thing that but there are crazies out there, and they've got it wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that was what I was doing over time. I was slowly realizing that it was that things were not making as much sense in my head as I thought they did. So, someone, when they asked me when I was at high school, one of the non-believers asked me about, why, and I kind of, without even thinking, gave a version of Pascal's wager. And when he brought that up, I was like, no, not quite that. It was just, and then the more I look back at it, like, yes, it totally was, but that was just not how I viewed it. And so the moment I realized I wasn't religious anymore was when I was scrolling through YouTube, and in the feed it came, because I was just watching some comedy videos on YouTube, and sometimes they have clips from actual TV shows, and it was one of a bunch of comedians in the UK making fun of religious movies, like the really cringy Bible ones. And I would never have clicked on that as religious, and I realized I clicked on it, I'm like, I'm an atheist, or I'm not religious anymore. It was the moment I realized that I was going to watch someone make fun of the religion I used to hold. And so that was actually the first atheist video I watched, not that it was. And then shortly after that, I came across Atheist Experience, and I was listening to a lot of that, the different hosts there. And so I came across all the arguments after I lost my religion. And as I kind of went through them in my head, I was like, how did I not realize these? Or some of them was like, yes, that's a very good point. And so it was this, and it wasn't that I wanted to become an atheist. As I said, I didn't want to. The whole time I was like, no, it'll make me a worse person. I'll be wrong. No, this has to be right. And so one of the last things I had, which was going back to what I mentioned earlier, was I had this idea that it was like, well, if God is all powerful and he can make the universe the way he wants, could he not be like a deist God and still have all of the Bible occur through natural means that people interpreted as his works?
Yeah. And
he wouldn't have to violate them. So all the miracles might have proper physical explanations. So the Red Sea parting could have been a tsunami because it brings the water out and then it comes back in. Those sorts of things. But according
to the story, though, that's not what happened. It literally split, right?
Yeah, and so in my head, that was people's interpretation before they understood. So, it was. I had a very interesting view, and I was not a big fan of preaching. So going out and telling people you must believe this. So even when I was religious, that was not something I went for. It was.
I can appreciate that actually.
Yeah, and I'd be much more likely to have a discussion now that I'm an atheist than before. But I guess before, my reasons were probably not as well thought through. It was more of it was just no one had really highlighted to me that no. Here are the reasons, or why do you believe? Those are not the questions people asked. And I'd had a few people was like, oh, I think anyone who believes in religion is gullible, and that did not help. I remember that from high school. Yeah. I was like, that was not going to do it. But I did have someone at uni, the professor's actually, he's no longer here, so I won't say where he is or his name, but he was just on one day, he had these moments. He was a bit of an odd guy. And he was just like, you're not religious, are you? None of those priests know what they're talking about. You can't say anything without evidence. And I'm still religious at that point. I was just like, what's it matter? But it was a long process. And I think I discovered I was an atheist through YouTube videos.
Now, what was it about the YouTube videos that made you realize that you were actually leaning towards atheism?
Because when I was religious, as I said, I used to do things like hold the Bible up on the desk because I had a really strong reverence for religious, going through motions that would, I guess you could say, glorifying God in hindsight. I was quite serious with it, and I would never have thought of making fun of God when I was religious. So the moment that I realized I was willing to do that, it meant, no, I don't hold this belief anymore. It's like anything else. I can have a joke with it. And it's not as though I wanted to make fun of that specifically, so I went looking for it. It was just there, and it was just another topic that I could deal with like any other. And so I realized I don't hold the reverence for it that I used to. And then slowly, and so even though when I realized I was an atheist, in terms of forming of my current understanding of skepticism and critical thinking is still ongoing. I'm still not there. I mean, we all have to work on it, and I guess that's what I'm doing here. I'm doing a PhD, hence the name Almost a Doctor.
Almost a Doctor. Yes. Yeah. Well, critical thinking is skills that we continually gain, right?
Mm.
Because you think I'm a great critical thinker, and then something happens, and you're like, you sort of lose that ability for a few minutes because it may be something that you want to believe, and then you sort of have to sit back and you're like, okay, wait a minute, we got to sit and think about this. So yeah, it can be tough sometimes. So
see if that if you can't read, it's got loading underneath it.
Yeah,
so one of my friends got me that as a birthday present this year, and I love it.
That's great. That's great. I had a t-shirt like that one that says sarcastic comment loading, but that's about as close as I got. But I did get something really cool in the mail the other day. I think you'll appreciate this. Reach over here. And it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. I thought they actually had little pieces of this stuff in here, except, of course, for the radioactive ones. But I got this cool little periodic.
Oh, I have that exact one. My sister got me that one for Christmas last year. Yeah, it's amazing.
Beautiful.
I love them. Yeah, I got one. It's got, and of course, they can't keep some of the radioactive ones because they won't last.
No, and probably some of them might just eat right through this. But anyway.
A bit of alpha radiation. The glass will actually stop.
Yeah, it's okay.
You could probably we're thinking what you could put in there. Like americium, like what you find in smoke detectors, that'd be fine. You could do uranium-238. That's more stable. So you could put the more stable isotope in there. You'd be fine. Yeah. It's just yellow cake uranium. You're not going to be able to make a nuclear bomb with it. So you're good. Yeah, one of my recent videos, I was looking at the Chernobyl disaster. So I've recently been doing a lot of looking at all of the nuclear reactor stuff again. But that was something we learnt in high school physics, actually, how to make the basic components of a nuclear reactor.
Oh, great.
Yep. And from Chernobyl, you don't cut corners. That doesn't end well.
Yeah, no, as we know.
Yes. Although I did say I would go through that story for the Maronite church. So for anyone who's not aware, so the Maronite church is kind of like a breakaway of the Catholic Church, and it arises back from one area of history I'm not super familiar with, but from what I've heard from my family, because my dad's side, I come from Lebanon, and there's a huge portion of Maronite Catholics there. It comes back on the days in the Ottoman Empire where you couldn't travel.
Yep.
So they couldn't actually always go back to Rome or have contacts. So they kind of formed their own sect. But the head of the Maronite church has the equivalent position of a cardinal if he visits Rome. So they're like, I describe them as like the Catholics on steroids. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that, like, despite that I don't, some of the sermons I've been to would be in Arabic. I'll get someone to translate for me, or I'll pick up a couple of words, and they will be the ones who still claim it's like when this saint died, he bled as much as 700 people, or all these crazy claims that you thought no one would make that anymore, but they kind of do.
Still do.
Or some of them do. And I've been to a few because they often do a lot of masses after someone dies. So they'll do 40 days, they'll do a year, and I'll go to those because it's really good. It shows the family that people still care. And so I've been to a couple of those for closer family members or other relatives in the community. And on occasion, I've been asked, "Oh, do you want to be an altar server?" Because unlike just the regular Catholic Church, they're not quite as organized with it. Anyone can do it. They'll just tell you on the day at the time, "Oh, just take the candle and go up there with it," or we need you to do this, or you can take the sign of the peace. They don't do it by shaking hands. The priest gets it from God, and then he'll hold his hands like that, and you'll actually come up and take it. Like you'll actually go down the hands. So it's not, they've kind of stopped doing that during COVID. They just kind of pass it on now spiritually without needing physical touch. Well, I hope so. Although we've been all right here. Yeah, tons of mice. I do like mice. I used to have them as pets. But
me too.
What
rats too?
What was happening? Yeah. So as I said, they're not as organized. So you get told as the mass goes as to what you do, and most of the part, I find it quite interesting. I'm still happy to help out, even though I don't believe. And then I got to one point where they've given us these little silver trays, like little rectangles about this big, and they've got all these ornate designs on them. Whether they were metal and silver plated, I couldn't tell, but they were not cheap. Very fancy ones. They had, I can't remember exactly what designs they had on them, but the priest, because they'll have multiple priests that give the the ceremony, and they'll go, and each one will have different roles. You have like a main one, and so one of the ones that was helping out, he's given this to me and the other altar server, and he goes, when we give out the communion, you've got to hold this under the wafer because we don't want bits of Jesus getting on the floor. And I'm doing my best to stifle a laugh. I've got, because I'm up in front of everyone while he's quietly telling me that in the corner. I cannot show that I'm about to laugh.
Right.
And it was just like I imagine if you told me that back when I was religious, I would have been, yeah, sure. And then kind of realized that it's a bit ridiculous that even if there was an all-powerful or loving God, that he would care too much about the bits of bread getting on the ground. But I just thought that was quite amusing.
Oh, hell yeah. Honey, I think there's a little bit of Jesus in the Roomba.
It's like, oops. But that was one of the reasons I didn't become a Eucharist minister. I didn't really want to, even when I was religious, is that you couldn't, once it had been blessed, you could not let any of the wafer go in the bin or anywhere else, including the wine. So someone at the end, and I wasn't an adult yet, had to get all of the wine from all the cups people had been drinking out of, pour it in one, and then drink it, because you couldn't put it down you couldn't dump it down the sink. What? And yeah, that was something I was never comfortable with. Was
no kidding.
Yeah. But the others they were all very nice people, but it was just like, well, if I didn't have to do that, I probably would have considered doing it. And I think that had been discussed, but we just said it was like, because I was, at the time I was much younger. I was well below 18, drinking age here. So I could have been like, I don't feel comfortable drinking. And that would have been enough, probably, that they'd just get someone else to do it on the side. But they had, but yeah, it was, it came a long way in terms of thinking, but as I said, like there's still a lot of people around me that are religious. I've got a lot of others. There's a few of the scientists I've done projects with that are. The evangelical union here at the uni is huge, but they're known for giving out a lot of free food, so people don't mind them.
If there's food involved, it's all good, right?
Free food or drink at the university, and you will get, with the exception of COVID, you'll get hundreds of thousands of people showing up. So that's how it works. So we've actually been doing well here in Australia, but we didn't have a case for a couple of months, and then like 2 days ago, some random person developed a case, and we don't know how he got it. And we're now trying to figure out if it came through hotel quarantine or not. So we've just put in rules back in place for masks and restricting numbers, but we were doing all right here. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But they actually were holding lectures. I've even taught a few in-person classes. It's nice because we're lucky here, but you can't find many vaccines. We haven't got many here.
No, we just got a bunch here. I'm actually scheduled for mine on Sunday.
Oh, so nice.
I'll get my first one on Sunday. I'm not sure which one it'll be, because we now have the Moderna, the Pfizer and Biotech, and the AstraZeneca ones here. So
we have we've got Pfizer and AstraZeneca are the ones we're trying to get, although because of blood clotting and the fact that we don't actually have many COVID cases here, the risk from having the AstraZeneca, they've now said that if you're under 50, you don't get it, or they will make it optional. So I'll be waiting out for the Pfizer one.
I don't understand that, because only like 0.00096% of the people end up with blood clots, and they're usually women between certain ages that are on birth control, that kind of thing.
It's a very small percent of the population. Yeah. However, here we don't really have many COVID cases. We've done a fair job of controlling it. And now the only times we get outbreak is actually people coming back from the UK or the US, and it somehow gets through hotel quarantine. We're using a lot of our old, the big hotels around Sydney, for example, as quarantine. So you stay there for 2 weeks, and people complain because it's boring. It's like, yes, well, it's better than letting people out. But still, people will test negative. They'll leave the quarantine, and then one or two, we occasionally get cases where they test positive after that. So it looks like they catch it in the quarantine. And from my understanding and from what I can guess, it's probably the air conditioning. It's the respiratory droplets are traveling through the air, and unlike planes, it's filtered. Though there have been other specific cases where you've had security guards that haven't exactly done social distancing, or there's someone will get it and then we don't realize and it gets out. Like Victoria, so the state south of where I am, had a big problem with that. So most of Australia's cases came from a second wave that was due to an outbreak after we just got rid of it. So yeah, but there are some states that haven't had a COVID case in a long time. Like the Northern Territory is the middle of nowhere, essentially. And they've done very well out of it in terms of not having many COVID cases. But of course, they do rely a lot on tourism. So see how it goes. But
yeah,
I'll complain on that one.
I mean, also the virus probably, if it does get out there, it probably kind of goes, what the fuck? There's nothing out here. So what am I going to do now? Oh, well, guess it's over.
It's constant like 40 degrees Celsius days, which is like 100, 110 degrees Celsius days, even in winter. So a bit too hot for it. But we've got, though we're slowly heading into winter, so things are getting colder here. But we've done all right.
It's the other way around here.
So. But it looks like things are going to take a while before they get back on order.
Yeah. Has anyone come down with it at all, or
not that I know? But like we can, like it's less than 1% of the population in Australia that's caught it.
Oh wow, that's really good.
Like it's like in New South Wales, like you can count the cases in total cases in Australia in thousands, like it's a couple of thousand. Let me double check. Bring up. We've done very well out of it, despite that you wouldn't quite expect it with our leadership. We have the slightly more right-wing party in federal power, but there was a bit of infighting between the states. Like it wasn't perfect, but compared to most countries, we actually did something. So I was surprised.
Yeah, good on you guys for that, because you tackled it right away.
And we're trying to open a travel bubble with New Zealand. So let me see.
Well, they did pretty good too.
Total cases in Australia is 30,000. Sorry, it was a bit more than 20,000 came from the Victoria, most of them with that second wave I was talking about. But in New South Wales state I'm in, 5,500, just over, with less than 1,000 deaths. So we've done all right. Tasmania's had almost none, which is the state right down the bottom if anyone's not aware of it. But we did all right, but we've got to keep it up. And we still had lockdowns and everything initially, and now we're just trying to bring restrictions back in when it escapes.
You mentioned Tasmania, and instantly I think of the old Looney Tunes with the Tasmanian devil. And as a kid, I always wondered how the fuck he got from Tasmania to the U.S. to be in these cartoons.
But it's cartoons. Maybe he floated.
That little typhoon.
Just
Tasmanian devil spinning, whipping across the ocean.
I've only ever seen them in the zoo because I've never been to Tasmania. But they're actually at the moment in a lot of trouble because we're losing almost all the wild population to a form of spreadable face cancer where they can actually catch it off each other because they bite and scratch each other a lot. And so they've been spreading it. So we've been trying to keep some in captivity so that they can't get it in the wild. And it's been a problem for a little while now. I haven't heard much on it recently, but we had a problem with that. Poor little things.
Let's hope that doesn't mutate to humans.
Hopefully not. I think that'd be too far from us anyway on the evolutionary tree for that to be likely, but I guess not impossible. Nope. But we do have a lot of bats here, a lot of very big bats. So
they're flying foxes, right?
Yes.
They're so adorable.
Yeah. You can't touch them because they have enough diseases that if you get scratched, you take yourself straight to hospital.
Really?
I have heard of a case where like little kids have died because they pick them up. They've been scratched and they don't tell anyone. But it's not very common, and they don't tend to bother people. They're in the trees around here at night, where I live as well. There's a lot of them. Some nights you'll look up just after the sun's gone down, so there's just enough light to see their silhouettes. Just them flying everywhere. I've been for holidays up north a bit too, and you just get swarms of what must be, tens of thousands of them flying around. But they are kind of cute, noisy. Cute.
Well,
Ooh,
they seem to like. There's an area, I guess I can't remember. I think it's up north where they got that river that they like to go to drink, but it's always loaded with like caimans or something. And then every time they go down to take a drink out of the lake, they just get attacked by these little gator thingies that are trying to eat them.
Yeah, well, although the gator thingies in Australia aren't little, so. But you don't find them as far south as Sydney. Instead, we have the world's most venomous spider and the world's most venomous snake. But if you go up to Queensland, everything tries to kill you if you go near the water, including the weather. So you have to be careful what time of year you want to plan a holiday in Australia, depending on where you want to go. I mean, the environment won't get you. It's just the animals in it. But apparently the most likely animal to kill you in Australia is a cow.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I remember hearing that some time ago.
Yeah. We know how to use. No, because we have anti-venom. But funnel webs are very aggressive. So if you see one and you haven't got something, you can hit it from a distance. Don't try and put it in like a jar or try and move it outside because it will go for your fingers. So they're quite obvious. They're big, they're black, but they don't like offices and things very well because they like little holes they can hide in because they make webs that look like funnels. So that's why in Australia you don't stick your hand anywhere you can't see it, including shoes. If you've left shoes outside, you always stamp on the toes. That's what I always do on camp.
Or just pick it up and dump it. You could do that.
Yeah, but normally I would. Yeah, so I would do that as well. But I'm a bit of an arachnophobe, so I'm always really careful. Stamp down on the toes, and then I'd shake it, see if anything comes out.
I'd be picking up the shoe, going, "Where are you, you little bastard?" Just lunges for my face.
Yeah, I've never been bitten by a spider though, but I've been bitten by plenty of ants.
Yeah.
Can't avoid that. Yeah.
They actually just discovered I guess a relative species of the funnel web that you guys have there in Florida, and there's only very, very few of these species because they live in an environment that is tiny and it's endangered. So they actually just added this brand new find of spider to the endangered species list. Yeah. And I saw it and I'm like, is that a Sydney funnel web? Because I love tarantulas and spiders. I raised them and shit when I was younger.
I might stay away from your place if you've got a lot of them.
They're not here now. I don't have any here now.
Okay.
But yeah, and it looks just like the Sydney funnel web, but it's in Florida. So it's just basically a related species is all.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of nasty animals, but if you know how to avoid them. But I think one of the more likely things that you have trouble with, or that we have trouble with tourists over here, is the water. It's the ocean. A lot of people come over here because of our beaches, but they don't understand how some of like the currents work and the rips. They get dragged out and they panic or things. Whereas most Australians will learn to swim from very, very young age. It's quite like it is very common for parents from like primary school or even before. Like I was one when I started getting swimming lessons to just learn how to swim because that's just how it goes. I don't know what it's like in America. I imagine a lot of people would still learn to swim there, but it's a big thing here. Even if you're not good at it, most people know how.
I learned quite young, but apparently I bit my swimming teacher. And she was I was afraid of the water, I guess, and she tried to throw me in there, and I bit her. Yeah.
Here, here the water bites you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to. That's why I said you want to be careful around the north of Australia at certain times of year because you'll get a lot of things in the water that can sting you pretty badly. One of the worst.
Box jellyfish.
Box jellyfish is the worst. You get a lot of blue bottles even south down here, so they're like a Portuguese man of war. They were not going to likely kill you, but they can be pretty big and they can hurt. And I've heard of people who get the tentacle wrapped around their waist when they go swimming. And
gosh.
Yeah, they used to keep. If you walked along certain beaches, particularly in Queensland, you'd see bottles of vinegar and other treatments for those sorts of stings just kept for 100 or so meters. But I don't think they keep the vinegar anymore. I don't think they found out it doesn't work too well. So I think they put other things. But
I heard it's very like the relief is brief, and then just pain, pretty much. Yeah.
So, but if you're careful what time of year, you're fine. I have never been stung by a jellyfish or a blue bottle, anything like that. If you know what you're doing, it's all right. Just the drop bears, but the Vegemite keeps them away.
That's keeps some of the tourists away too, by the way.
Yeah. Also, I'm guessing it's all right if people ask questions, because I'm also happy to answer questions too. Be on anything.
If anyone does have any questions, let me know. Best way for me to notice is if they're, super chat style. But
yeah. Also, notice Skywatcher was just mentioning the blue-ringed octopus. That's another one. That is one that. So for those who aren't familiar, Australia has a species of octopus that is very, very small, and when it wants to give a warning off, it highlights these blue rings it's got on it. It lives in rock pools down by the coast, but its bite, you can't feel it because it's got an anesthetic in the venom, but it's a neurotoxin, so it'll paralyze you, and so you don't feel you've been bitten. So a lot of people don't realize. Particularly tourists, they'll put it on their hand because they think it's cute. They'll walk off with it. That's happened a couple of times. And we have no anti-venom for it. The only thing is to hope someone can get you to a hospital on a ventilator and just wait for your body to flush the toxins out. Yeah. But as I said, that's why in Australia you don't put your hand anywhere you can't see. But I was I met someone a couple of weeks ago who's a marine biologist, or they have a background in it. They said that they're down by a rock pool. They're actually from Jersey in America, and they were down by the rock pool, and they were looking for something, and they saw an octopus. Like, hey, little guy, and then it highlighted one of its blue rings, and they just were like, nope.
Yeah,
get out of here. I think they'll try to coax it out there. It's like, oh no, that's not one I want to go near. But yeah, down near Sydney, it's pretty good.
Now, I know someone who had personally knew someone who had a blue ring octopus as a pet.
Yeah.
And he had him for, I think he had him for about 14 years, give or take.
Mm.
And I remember seeing him actually, scratching him and touching him, and because they won't hurt you if they're comfortable around you. So I guess that takes some time as a pet to get used to the person you're with.
Yeah, and they've got their beaks underneath them. Yeah. So I imagine if you're touching the top. As I said, they flash their blue rings when they feel threatened. So that they really, because that's their warning sign. So if you can see those blue rings, that means back off.
That means you're pissed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's often the rock pools and the natural environment that people come across them. But yeah, I mean, people keep snakes. So I guess it's a similar thing. Yeah. If you know what you're doing, you can go for it. But if you don't, just back away. I keep but one of the most fierce Australian.
You'd be surprised. Octopuses can live a long time. Octopi can live. Octopuses. Actually, octopods, they even call them now. There's no real right way to say a pluralization of octopus. But yeah, they can live, I think, I read the other day, 60 years is, I think, the oldest.
Yeah, they can live very long. They're very intelligent.
Yeah.
They've got almost an own individual functioning brain, like a mini brain in each of their tentacles. So if you cut one off, it'll still crawl around for a bit. And they're very, very amazing creatures. But one of the most fierce creatures in Australia is the magpie. The Australian magpie, because they will attack people. So if you go certain areas of Australia, people will actually attach zip ties to their bike helmets because so they stick up like a porcupine, and because they'll go for eyes and things. So on the other hand, but it's only a small percentage. But they also can remember faces. So I feed some of the birds on my back veranda. I feed them meat because you don't feed birds bread; it's not good for them. Right. And so they know me. And they will show up. They'll wait for me. They'll even sit on the kitchen window and look in to see who's there and see if they're going to get food. Kookaburras as well that we feed. They're not the smartest birds, but they're very cute. Because they're not used to. Yeah, they're not the most coordinated either. But we've got one that's really, really friendly, and I can even pat him. He's just a wild kookaburra. But the magpies can learn faces very well, so they'll recognize humans. So if you piss off a magpie in Australia and you go back into its territory, it will remember you for 5 years or something. So yeah, don't piss off Australian wildlife because it remembers.
All right. So my buddy who told me that he had the thing for that long, he lied to me.
Ah,
And I never looked this up, so I just believe. I had no reason to not to believe him. Yeah, our blue rings live about 2 to 3 years. So he lied to me, the fucker.
oh,
So
there we
I
go.
didn't
It's
have
a good
Google
lesson.
then either. Yeah,
It's a good lesson in skepticism. That's why we check everything.
that's right. And also, one of the longest lived octopods, whatever you want to call them, is the Pacific giant, the giant Pacific octopus, and they can live up to 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I wonder
Some
how much.
octopi have lifespans of 6 months. Like, what? That sucks. I was just getting to know them too, and
I also believe humans are also an exception because most animals tend to live longer the bigger they get. And out of the mammals, like most mammals actually have somewhat, for their size, similar-ish lifespans. So we should have lifespans probably a bit closer to that of dogs. But for some reason, and I'm not sure how many primates, or if all primates have it or not, we have a gene that actually is like a super gene to slow aging. There's like a few animals with that. I think elephants might be another one. I'm not 100% sure on this one.
Elephants are long-lived as well.
Yeah, but there's like a gene that we have that actually slows our aging process down. So for the size of animal we age very slowly. So which is interesting, but I guess it kind of makes evolutionary sense because we are very slow developers. We tend to do things slowly. So that process, like if we were at old age by 25, that's not a good thing. But in the wild, once you pass 20, 25 to 30, it doesn't matter. That's long enough. You've had kids and you've raised them enough that they probably will survive, or one of them will survive. But yeah, there's. I
mean, there was a time when that was, a relatively normal lifespan for humans, right?
Yeah. Although
science, that's changed.
Yeah, and I think there was a study that showed that hunter-gatherer cultures don't actually get any more sleep than we do. So you think, then in the wild you can sleep more hours, but you don't. So we just tend to do things with better technology. But
ancient humans would sleep in 2 blocks. They'd do 4 hours here, 4 hours there because they had to keep moving. So they would do like a chunk of hours at a time, and then just keep moving and hunting and gathering. But as soon as we became civilized, everything changed. Like, what I mean by that is setting up settlements and stuff like that. Everything changed after that because we became farmers.
Yeah, and one of the things is caveman's a bit of a misnomer. We tended to use caves only shelter, maybe from extreme events or for like almost like early spiritual ceremonies. So that's why you find certain paintings, and they realize that there are certain instruments people do to make very primitive acoustic noises, including, I guess, basic music and percussion. But there was other tools that they had. So it was very, very simple. But because of that, we've actually been able to figure out a bit of evolutionary history. There was one animal in the Americas that told us a lot about when humans arrived, because we thought humans arrived by some certain point in North America, it was about 10 to 15,000 years ago.
And longer than that.
Yes. And one of the hints that I think is recent that suggested we were there even earlier than we thought was the fact we found a cave painting of an animal that went extinct before we thought humans got there. But yet there was an almost perfect drawing of what one of these animals looked like that someone found. And they're like, well, clearly either this animal lived longer than we thought or humans were there earlier than we thought. And I think
the latter is more likely.
Yeah. And they were like, well, because some of the cave paintings we've got of the animals have also been able to tell us what these animals were like. So that's how we know that the European lions, the males didn't have manes, because some of the artwork is that good that you can tell based on what they're doing, like the postures they have and the positions they have compared to each other. You can tell without actually needing to look for any painted genitals, which are the males and which are the females in some of the paintings. And so you can figure out that that's a male that doesn't have a mane because of the certain things. So these people were observant. DOG, if a koala bites you within 30 minutes, you will poop out all of your...
Including the brain. So Ken Hofer was bit by a koala. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time for my chat. But they're fun.
Also, and I'm just going to apologize for, well, not Ken Hovind because he's not Australian, Ken Ham.
Yeah, yes. Don't worry about it.
Australia is genuinely sorry for that. We've revoked his Australianness, but yes. And I think New Zealand also revoked Ray Comfort's New Zealandness.
I got to play him in one of Prophet Azad's videos.
I was watching those recently.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love them. They're actually very well made.
Yeah, they're fun.
Quite like those cartoons. I wish I could do one. That's how I know I've made it when people ask me to voice characters. There's 3 ways I know I've made it on YouTube. When I get to do a video like that for someone like Prophet Azad or like the voiceover, it doesn't have to be on that channel, just any of them. Either I get to 1,000 subs or get a video to 10,000 views. That's nice. Kind of my goal. Or the third one, a religious apologist, putting that term very loosely, makes a video trying to debunk me. That's how I know I've made it popular enough to do that. So, but even though I mainly focus on science things, so if anyone's wondering, I sort of do videos. I try and pick more interesting areas. So I'll answer questions like, do submarines fly? Just try and get people thinking.
Only if the Hulk throws them, right? Like if the Hulk picks ones up and throws it, then you got to find somewhere. Yeah. So I just use that as kind of an excuse to look at how submarines work and then see if we can answer the question, do they fly through the water? And so I have an approach. I did a recent one on Chernobyl. That's the longest video it took to make because the research took forever. So it was like the science behind what went wrong. I don't go into the politics because have I seen that one? I don't think I've seen that one.
It was one of the more recent ones. But yeah, I'm still trying to grow the channel. I think I need to learn more about
I thought I'd already subbed to you, and I subbed today for sure. But I already thought that I'd subbed to you.
Well, I did see that, so thanks for that. And
I do enjoy the science videos. So
yeah, and I would like to produce another one this weekend, but I have an assessment I got to do. But that assessment is actually making a 3-minute presentation on my thesis, so I may end up making a video on that anyway because
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because none of my videos cover my thesis topic.
Let's assess this. No, I'm just kidding.
So we'll see how that goes. But I also have another one that I kind of made. I didn't release it because I'm not sure if I'm quite happy with it. I was just experimenting with not doing a live one, so just a voiceover with pictures, but I was doing it on friendly rats. Read a couple of papers recently that showed that rats will actually help other rats with no perceived benefits. And we only thought that was the sort of behavior that primates, including humans, showed, but turns out even rats will get satisfaction equivalent to, in the paper's own words, equivalent to on par with getting chocolate out of helping another rat, even if they don't get to interact with that rat afterwards. So I thought that was very fascinating. And they will avoid chocolate, they'll avoid treats to avoid hurting a friend. They would rather go hungry than hurt another rat in many cases. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I actually came across that because I was watching Vice Rhino's channel and he mentioned it in one of his videos. I was like, oh, I got to go have a look at this. So I read the paper. I'm like, I want to make a video on this. And so yeah, it was a very fascinating topic.
Yeah, Rhino's a good guy. He's a funny guy. We have a few laughs now and again in the group chat that I've had him on the show too, but took me forever to get him on. Like, come on, man, you gotta come on. Oh, all right. He just never wanted to come on, I guess, but finally talked him into it. I think he was threatened by other people too. You better go on Neil's show.
I love going on other shows. I'm pretty loose on that. And so if there are anyone listening and if you want to talk science or other things that are somewhat related, I'm happy to do that. I've been on shows. I will do. So I was on Truth Wanted. That was lovely. I enjoyed that.
I saw
so
that.
I'll happily talk about that. Yeah, and then, but if people want to do science, people want to do skepticism, or just have a general chat, I don't mind. I enjoy doing that, and yeah, I love talking. So why not? Enjoy science communication and talking. I'll put them together.
Yeah. You and my friend scientist Mel should get together and do a show.
I've been on one of her shows.
Oh, have you?
Yeah,
Oh, man,
I did one with
I
one of
must have missed
her.
that one.
This Week in BS, I did one with.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Mel Navadia and myself went on, and I was discussing lasers for a while because I use lasers in my research.
Vardy is great too.
Yeah, I've been on Navadia's channel. I did a live show with Dr. Carl on Navadia's channel with Jen.
That's right.
And if anyone is not familiar with Dr. Carl, he's Australia's Bill Nye. I think it's the easiest way to put it.
Yes, he is. Yeah, that's a perfect description.
Yep. And his office is actually below, so I get to chat with him every now and then. But yeah, I enjoy that. I even did a course recently because despite being a PhD, even though Australia doesn't do coursework for PhDs, because we do a lot more in undergrad for it instead. Mm-hmm. So physics still makes me do 2 subjects, and so I managed to get one of them was a course in science communication. So so an honors level, so like postgrad level course, and we looked a bit about the history, like the history of it, a bit of the actual terminology from like a paper point of view, and then we have to make a few things. So I had to do some artwork, had to do like a visual thing, had to do write an article, and I got to give a presentation on Tuesday, which I'm still writing. But I can show. I was just sitting there. So I like drawing, so I decided I'd do kind of this to show my research.
Look at that.
So if anyone's wondering, I detect methane by making it sing with a laser, and then you can use like a tuning fork. The more methane, the louder the sound. And so I was trying to do that. Yeah, I give me a pencil, I'm okay, but give me a paintbrush, I'm no. I'll sit back. Someone else can do that.
Yeah. We get Bob Ross. He's good at that stuff.
Yeah.
Mikey showed up, by the way. He had his little break from streaming because he was streaming on his other show earlier on the bin there, and they do an after party as well. So he is here now. Mikey, you missed most of the show. You can pop in here, buddy, if you want. There he is.
Hola. Let me just say I had to get some food. I apologize. I was absolutely starving, and I tried to take a little bit of a cat nap, turn the stream on, and you guys were just talking about the most terrifying I'm going to kill you monsters on the planet. So thank you for that. That made for a great nap, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that most of the most terrifying monsters I've ever come across don't exist anymore. So we should be good. Like T-Rexes, they had the biggest eye of any land animal, or at least from what we understand of the brain socket. So staying still wouldn't help. They'll still see you.
I'm sorry. Are you helping right now? Are you just?
I don't think so.
Like the T-Rexes are gone, but there's others that have taken their place to kill me?
No. Nothing's taken their place because they're also a lot lighter and faster than anything else their size that you'd find now, because mammals tend to be a lot heavier. Mm-hmm. But they also, based on their bone structure for their legs, they reckon they were long distance runners, and that their top speed would have been just faster than the top human speed. So they could jog quite comfortably at like 40 kilometers an hour for like marathon lengths of time. So you're not outrunning them.
So about the octopi, pods. You're like, oh, well, it's too bad they don't live that long. I'm just on the lark, just pulled up a little Google here. I'm like, how many eggs does an octopus have? 200,000, Neil. That's why they only live fucking 5 years. Can you imagine if they lived 30 years each and she was having 200,000 at a time? We would just be swimming in octopuses for the rest of our days. They would take over the earth. So I'm glad they only live 2-3 years, or else the ocean wouldn't even have any water left. It'd just be all octopods everywhere.
There is I can't remember where I found this, but they think that once humans are gone, it's quite possible that cephalopods could end up being the next most intelligent species that actually end up coming on land.
Do we know that they're not already planning that?
They probably already have, but they're so smart we'd never figure it out.
They've been acting like, oh, I have blue rings. I'm not trying to plot world domination. Quick, have some more eggs.
Maybe that was how they keep the people away. It's just like, I get blue rings, and if I sting people if they come near me, they won't come near me, and then I can plan things with all the other octopuses, and no one will want to interfere.
Yeah. Just give me a sec, guys. Blue rings. Scare
I remember.
Damn, the human wants to pick me up.
I remember the scientist George Harrison wrote a song called "Octopus's Garden" in the shade, and he listed out all the things that the octopi were up to. No,
He did?
No, didn't George Harrison, the Beatles? I like to be under the sea and octopus. No,
It's not George Harrison. That was Ringo Starr.
Ringo wrote that one.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it! I quit. I'm done. I failed. I missed my one Beatles reference for the day.
Yeah, that was a Ringo Starr tune, buddy.
But what was your doctorate in? I didn't hear. Almost a doctorate in.
So yes, I'm currently doing it in physics, and I work in building detectors for environmental monitoring. I haven't actually really covered it too much today, so yeah, you didn't actually really miss it. I just didn't it hasn't come up yet. But yeah, so I work on using lasers to do various things. So one of those is to build a certain gas detector where we actually generate sound from methane, which is a terrible greenhouse gas, though technology can be used for other gases. And you can generate sound from it. The more methane there is, the louder that sound is. So you just put like a very sensitive microphone next to it and you listen. So my analogy is you're turning the methane molecules into a choir. So methane making music. I'm trying to write a 3-minute presentation on that. So yeah, it gets very complicated after that, but I guess that's all of science. So that's why I'm interested in science communication, because I like that. I like trying to figure out how do you make complex topics simple. And it's not always easy, because the simpler you make them, the more likely there is to be miscommunication.
Right.
So yeah, it's a good balancing act.
Neil's got his chemistry over there, and he says stuff, and I just nod. He says, "Oh yeah, I do this and this, and then I do that, and I add some of that, and then you splash that, and there you go, it's cleaned up." And I'm like, "Into the bottle, push the button."
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I also have a background in chemistry, so I did a double majored at science. So I have chemistry and physics majors. So my honors actually, which is it's Australia, and it's the only country that really still does it to any degree, though you can do it in England. It's like a 1-year master's, and if you do really well on it, you can go straight to a PhD. So I did that. That was actually in chemistry, but I'm a physicist now.
Can we set up the battle between you and the Veritasium guy to be the Australian physics person?
I have the feeling he would probably win, because I have 200 subscribers and he has how many million now?
An unreasonable amount.
He's got a lot. I've seen some of his stuff. He's nice. I think he's the same uni. He's an ex-person from this uni, same one as I was at. One of my friends met him and got them to autograph their Keep Cup.
Oh, cool.
That was the other year when I was in my honors year 2 years ago.
He's only got 9 million subs. I'm reading. I'm like, that's not funny. Oh, the name. Oh.
Yeah.
I was recently, someone asked me a question, what was my plan for world domination? And I said, looking around at the world for the last few years, I don't think I want to.
Yeah, no, just leave it well enough alone.
Leave that for someone else. But my plan, I'll train all the birds and I'll do it that way. I'm not relying on people to take over the world.
You got to train them to come and get you off the fucking place. Just a whole bunch of like sparrows come and pick you up and fly you away.
My profile picture for Zoom is actually me with a magpie on my arm. You can't see my face in it, but I've just got he's just a wild magpie that I just befriended over time. He'll sit on my arm. A nice photo of him looking at the camera and smiling. Well, smiling as a bird can do, but that was...
we've got what do we have? Ravens and whiskey jacks here. Whiskey jacks are kind of like your magpies, except they don't do the talking thing. They just come and steal everything.
Our kookaburras are good at stealing food.
Yeah.
I saw
I had a car. Where the hell did my car go? Fucking magpies.
They're just
magpies.
birds.
Yeah, I got mobbed for my lunch once at the station just up the road from my house by like 6 magpies. I made the mistake of deciding that I'd eat my chicken roll on the platform because it was a nice warm day, and I thought, well, I'll wait for the train. So I'm sitting there, and one of the chips was partially broken. I picked up the chip, and half it fell on the ground, and one of the magpies in the area saw it. It was like, phew. I'm like, oh, it's on the ground. It can have it. But all its friends saw it getting a chip. And that was enough. Next thing I know, I've got 4 magpies on the ground next to me. There's one off hiding on a rail, and then on the chair, like right here, 20 centimeters from my head, there's just a magpie looking over my shoulder for my food. And I'm just like, there was one on the ground was looking at me. I'm just like, what are you doing? So I picked up a chip, and then I'm looking at the one over my shoulder, and the chip is this close to my face, and just a flash of black and white. It's gone straight past taking a chip.
I just ate my thumb.
But the funniest ones I see are the kookaburras, because they always take things that are far too big for them. So one of them tried to steal from us, like we were doing a barbecue, and it stole a 300-gram piece of beef and tried to fly off with it. It's like the beef weighed more than the bird. Or the other day I was going for a hike, and I managed to get to the local, the national park, and I just saw a family. They've just put some sausages on a grill, and I just see this kookaburra come down and get this giant sausage like this big, just come to swim up into the tree. It didn't even go very far from the people. It was just sitting there, although just looking at the kookaburra. Because one thing, Australian birds are not scared of people.
Nope.
Everyone I speak to who's not from Australia, particularly from Asian countries, are like, your birds are crazy. Like, they'd be terrified. Like, they wouldn't go near you. And like one of my friends from China was telling me, he's like, no, the birds in China know that you don't go near people, but in Australia, the people know they don't go near birds.
Everything tries to kill you in Australia. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, but
either kill you or steal your food. One way or another, you're dying.
The birds don't try and kill you. They just want what you've got. So as long as they've done enough to you, or they can get the food, they don't care too much. But the reason the magpie swoop is that it's only during certain times of the year when they got babies, because their babies can't fly, but they will leave the nest and walk around. No, so they're very protective. So
they got to get back quick because, Junior's going to fall out of the nest for the 38th time today because he doesn't know how to be still.
They actually deliberately, like what happens is magpies deliberately kick them out so that they'll be on the ground and they'll walk around for like 6 weeks before they learn to fly. So they can only run. So they get terrified of anything big that comes near their baby. And so they just swoop.
Oh, man.
But it's a learned behavior. It's not natural to them. It's just, they've learned it's a very effective way to keep people away.
Yeah.
So there's lots of videos of people being attacked by them. They're bad for eyes, so that's why you want to wear like sunnies if you're near magpies.
My
safety glasses. But they can be very friendly. Yeah, that'll work. Can you see through those? I can't tell from here.
Yep.
See, that just lets me know
that they're so close you just don't even notice them, unless you focus on them. Then you notice them.
See, I think the problem Australians have is they haven't eaten enough magpies to instill fear into them.
I don't magpie. Well, yeah, I guess Cornish hens are tiny, so just
start grilling them up. They'll knock it off.
Well, from what I've seen of Australian birds, you can't scare them. But I've decided a different approach. Fear. I befriend them. I bribe them so they're on my side. So if I stage a coup, I got all the birds behind me.
There you go.
But the thing is, I'm
smart.
Yeah. Everybody else is like, no, we need to protect ourselves from them. I'm like, no, I'll friend. They're mine. Screw having the military on your side if you need a coup. Unfortunately, we don't have Monty Python level bunny rabbits, DOG.
Killer bunny.
I was watching that recently, actually, at a friend's birthday, and we so we had a private viewing of Holy Grail for a mate's birthday. It was awesome.
Very cool.
I just run away. Yeah,
that's great.
Sharp teeth.
I mean, emus in Australia have a troubled and long history. Am I right? There was a whole war over it, and the emus won.
Yes. The Australian military lost a war against emus.
I wasn't being dense. That actually happened.
Yep.
The Canadian Army lost a war against our Canadian geese, so we know the feeling. As we call them, cobra chickens.
No one can stop them.
I believe isn't it Aaron Ra who has the world's most famous, or took the world's most famous photo of an emu? It was taken in America. Yeah, Aaron Ra. Sorry. I think he's mentioned it in one of his videos.
I think you're right. You never showed it to me though, so I don't know. It's probably you can find it somewhere.
Yeah,
right now.
But they're more for like Central Australia. You don't find them, like you're not going to find them in a city, but you will find wallabies because we do have a lot of national parkland around. So occasionally, I've been on hikes and just randomly come across wallabies that will get somewhat close. And then you get kangaroos. Particularly when you go out to the country, you can just find lots of them. Like they even become a pest.
Yeah.
But they're fairly tasty kangaroos, actually. You got to cook them medium rare, but it's very, very similar to beef.
That's what it is. There you go.
Yes. So in the chat was noting he had a pet emu. Yeah, that's I think where he got the photo from. They're big birds, but I've only ever seen them in the zoo actually, because I've never unfortunately been out on places where you can find them.
We had there's a guy here who was raising llamas on one part of his farm and emus on the other. So yeah, I guess for the eggs and the meat. I don't know.
We also share a lot of our birds in common with Papua New Guinea, which is just north of us. And I've been to Papua New Guinea, and it's really interesting. But we both have cassowaries, which are like an emu-sized bird that is very colorful, but somewhat
They're fucking lethal.
Yeah,
they will kill you.
Like
they're literally fucking dinosaurs, is what they are.
Velociraptors.
Yeah,
looks like we finally got a super chat question.
Yeah.
Circumcision uncommon in Australia outside of religious reasons. Yeah, compared to the US, it is very uncommon here. It would be in the minority from my understanding. Not that I've gone around to many people to check, but but I have family in the medical profession, and they, from what I've gathered from those who actually a bit more familiar with the stats, it's fairly uncommon. So whereas I think in America, I believe it's like the opposite. It's most people.
And Canada.
And so Australia is the opposite on that.
It's a big thing here for a long time, like 60s, 70s, 80s. It was people kept using the excuse of well, it's much cleaner, less. It's like fuck off. That's not true. If you take a shower and clean it properly, like you would anything else, you'll be fine. And thank you for the super chat, Joseph. By the way.
But yeah, if there's any llama emu, I just saw that from Native Atheist.
Oh no! What if they combine forces?
The llamas and the emus and the cassowaries together, it's over for everybody.
Yeah, they spit at you so you can't see, and then they attack you.
Yeah, and then he crosses some magpies to do a little eye damage too.
The magpies they use for recon. They're always going up in the air. They're the sentry.
Blue ringed octopus again.
I'll try anything, including actually I've had octopus.
We've got a few things that are quite poisonous to eat. So yes, there's a few things we don't. At least we shouldn't. But we need to get better at either farming or reducing how much meat we eat. Because apparently, if the world ate as much meat as Australia, we would need 1.5 planets to sustain the population. So there's a lot of it's a bit excessive. But I was having this discussion, science discussion, because I just got back yesterday from a trip out to a country town to teach, because I do that on the side of the PhD as like a casual job. It's not a requirement for a PhD, but most people will do it. I quite enjoy it. So we went out, we're teaching chemistry at a high school. But I was with a lot of biology people, and the question came up, would you eat meat that was grown in a Petri dish?
Sure.
So you actually take the sample, a cell line sample from an animal once, and then you just keep it like an immortal cell line, and you can just grow it. It won't probably be the exact same as like a steak, but would you? And that was the question. And I mean, I know my answer, but I'm curious to get yours.
Oh yeah, I would. Yep, that's right. Definitely. Because I mean, if we are able to produce that in the future, then that means we don't have to eat the actual animals anymore, because we can just produce burgers and some forms of slabs of meat, however they turn out. And I'm sure they'll get better at producing those as time goes on. You'll probably hit a time where you won't even realize that you're eating something that isn't actually a steak. It's just the technology is fairly new. So give it some time, right? And I think that's a great option for people that want to continue eating meat.
Mikey, what do you think?
As long as it's not made out of the same stuff that they have, like the Impossible burgers and all that stuff, that doesn't sit well with me. So as long as it's better than that stuff, because that stuff makes me sick every time.
Yeah, I didn't mind the Impossible Whopper, actually.
It gave me like crazy heartburn, and I ended up just losing it later. I just couldn't. It just upset my stomach so terribly.
I get heartburn from everything.
There was a couple of really good, great vegan restaurants. They like Thai style or Vietnamese style. They're just up the road from the uni, and I've been to them. I'm not a vegan. I normally don't eat vegan food because I just never managed to get into it. But they were lovely, and I remember getting their meat equivalents, and they don't taste exactly like meat, but I was not expecting it to. It was like, I don't need it to taste like a steak. I just need to enjoy it, and I did.
Right.
And so for me, when I look at a lot of those like alternatives, it's like I don't necessarily need them to match meat exactly. I just need it to be tasty. And I think there is a lot of people who are trying to match the texture, and it's very hard. So I think the cell lines are a good one. But it looks like we have a couple other questions. So I imagine
this one here, I don't know who Scott Morrison is.
PM, our Prime Minister.
Oh.
So so our politicians are don't wear their religion on their sleeves nearly as much as they do in America. I've kind of given up paying too much attention to them. But they do. Some of them will, and we've had a few in the past that will make pretty strong comments about it. We only recently, a couple of years ago, allowed gay marriage, and they had to have it wasn't a referendum, but it was like they asked everybody in the country to vote, but it wasn't a binding decision, and then the parliament made a decision on it. It was weird the way they did it, and it passed. Like it was well over 50% or high enough over 50%. But yeah, some of our politicians do. But recently, it's just the only thing I see in the news is we had a COVID case a couple of days ago. I really should know more about Scott Morrison wearing his religion on his sleeve. But even in Australia, when politicians do wear it on their sleeve, people don't take them as seriously. We've already had a prime minister that was an open atheist, and whilst there were some people that cared, the majority of the people just were like, okay. So that is something that we have over a lot of countries. We've had, even though we're technically a Christian country, we have had a leader that wasn't. And we've had a few people swear in on the Quran. I think that's happened once or twice, but there's still, particularly in our Liberal Party is the more right-wing one, and they do tend to be a bit more, well, they're the conservative ones, so they do tend to be more religious, and you get the like the liberal nationalists, things like that. There's also and they do tend to be far more religious, but it's hard to tell the effect when they do wear their religion on their sleeve, because as I've mentioned a few times, we don't tend to take it as seriously. But that can also be that backfire, and that it can be a bad thing, because then people don't tend to oppose it the ideas when it happens, because we're just like, oh, it's not going to affect anyone. It kind of passes a bit under the radar. So you want to be a bit careful. And I think part of that did also, that was why it took us so long to do anything for like equal marriage between whoever wanted to get married. And so there was a lot of, but you could get most of the same rights. But so many people that you're still having to discuss all that with, but that's going to be the same anyway.
Would you eat pasta? Oh, fuck yeah.
Now without consent.
All right. Matt, we've gone past the hour.
Yes.
Quite a bit past, but I didn't even realize it because I'm having such a good time chatting with you about all this stuff. I want to thank you for joining me today, man. This has been a little bit of a long time coming because we had it planned earlier, but of course the whole ordeal happened and we had to
that happens.
Yeah, but it's been great, dude. It's been real fun talking to you, and thank you for sharing your story with us. And thanks for jumping in, Mikey, at the last little bit there. Glad you got a little bit of a break before we get into the after party.
I had a euro. Sorry, man.
That's okay. Euros are good.
That was good.
All right, so that's what we're going to do, guys. We are going to have an after party, so if you want to check it out, there's a link below. You can click on that, and it'll take you over to where we're going to be chatting some more about all kinds of crazy stuff, like killer animals and eyeballs being popped out by magpies and shit like that. They're stealing my gig.
Neil, the 604 magpie.
That's going to be the new one, yeah. But anyways, you're good for a little bit for the after party, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
I don't have to be anywhere for another 2 hours.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm
because
gonna
I
go
got
that
back.
long, so I got to get some
I got
sleep.
back from the country yesterday, so
okay.
Like not a different country, just out in the country, and I've just got a training session at 1:30, and then I'll be working after that. So I managed to get a fairly easy day because we came back earlier than we expected.
No, perfect.
Yeah. All right.
So this worked out well.
Nice.
God was never mind. I'm just kidding. Anyway, all right. So we'll see you guys over at the after party. Thank you to all my amazing patrons. You guys are awesome. I got a new $10 patron, by the way. Jonathan.
Ooh.
Jonathan became a patron.
Mr. Jonathan.
Yeah. He. I think he was still drunk when he did it, so that may disappear. I'm not sure.
Still counts.
It still counts. He's in for at least 10. We know that. Yeah. So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for all your support. I actually really do appreciate it. So Randolph and I are starting up our own call-in show real soon called True North Talk. You can head over to the channel right now, or you can visit our website, www.truenorthtalk.ca, and you can check out all the stuff we have there. There are a couple of videos there of the construction project that we've got going on, and they're pretty funny. Also, they've revamped and relaunched the nonprofits, and I'm one of the hosts that you'll see on there from time to time. Mikey's been on there with us. You never know, we might actually pull Mr. Matthew in with us too one day, as long as the time works out for you.
Oh yeah, upside down mind.
Yeah, because we do Wednesdays. We start recording at about 5:30. After, like, so similar to right now, but
yeah, my camera's actually been inverted, so I didn't look up normal today.
Right, you have those special cameras that put you the right way up.
Yeah. That way's up actually.
Right, yeah. So that's what Nacho Witness told me. He said we have special cameras, so we look right side up. The only problem is you can't hide the fact that the moon actually looks upside down to you guys. So it does. If you look at the moon from where you are, and then you look at the moon on the upper half, they're inverted. They're different. So
that's because the Earth is flat.
That flat earthers. Fuck you.
No, because if you put it and then you walk across the room, if you put it on that dude was so.
I'm just gonna fucking mute him. So yeah, the nonprofits, which airs between Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience about 3 p.m. on Sundays, one of the ACA products. It's a great show. Anyways, the last Saturday of every month, or actually, I think in 2 days from now, we're doing an episode because we couldn't get it done on the earlier Saturday. And X will be joining us. X from the Utah Outcast will be joining us. And it's called Atheist Drinking Out Loud. We get together about 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, where Andy lives, and he's one of the other hosts of the show. And Seamus from the Free Thought Prophets and myself, we get together with a guest and make fun of people and stupid political shit and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. So head over to the channel Laughing in Disbelief and sub to it, and you'll know when we go live with that show as well. That's about it. But, like I always say at the end of the interviews, guys, like the late, great Chris, throwing a little belch there on top of it, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.